Hello, listeners, and welcome to a brand new show as part of the Rediscover the 80s podcast. We are calling it the Memory Jogger. And me and my bud Wyatt. Hello, Wyatt.
Greetings, how are you?
I am fine. And I didn't say before, this is Jason. And we have a new show that we've been scheming for a while to do this, haven't we?
Yeah, I know it's been back and forth. Maybe not this exact format, but something along the lines of something new and improved and experimental. That's probably the right word for it.
Yes. Yeah, experimental. Because, I don't necessarily think we have a layout or a specific idea for how this show is going to go from episode to episode, other than we're going to have a topic and we'll chat about it and try to remember some things about it. But not a whole lot of structure. We just want to, like you say, be a little experimental and freewheel it for a couple shows, see how it goes. If it works, it works.
Right. If you follow any of our other entities, especially Agents of Mask, you notice that Jason and I typically start out with something and we go on about 50 different bunny trails before we decide, you know what, it's been long enough. Let's go back and actually talk about Mask, which is the subject at hand. So
yes. And we've also done in this Rediscover the 80s podcast, we've done a couple memories shows, which basically go through the history of a franchise and our experiences with it. But instead of essentially the franchise being the highlight of each episode, I think we're going to try to concentrate more on our specific memories as they pertain to that topic, if that even makes sense.
Right. So a good example would be right now, this first episode is really just to establish us, and you're going to hear us talk about our experiences growing up and getting to know us. But if we go on to the next topic, and I'm shooting from the hip for a topic, this is no way, shape, or form. But if we talk about, I'm trying to think of a good example, Batman, the 1966 Batman. All right, we're not leaving we're not leaving it restricted to the 80s like we usually do. It's going to be true. It's whatever we grew up with. So the idea is. Yeah. What do you remember about it? And it can go off, like I said, 50 different ways. I can remember watching it on this channel, Central PA, and we're watching a New York channel. Or, the only time we got to watch it was at 3:00, so we were busting our tails trying to get home. That kind of tangent will probably ensue rather than, I remember the corny wows and pows that you saw showed up.
You remember this specific episode where Batman was on the conveyor going into this machine, and the Joker tied him up. And we're not gonna talk about specific episodes. We're gonna talk about more or less where we interacted with, a certain TV show, or I don't know. We might go into specific toys, or I don't know. We're just gonna, I think, kind of wing it, like we said. As far as we've got some topics that we've written down, and we'll scheme a little bit. We're not going to totally go off the cuff, but the structure is going to be more tied around our experiences and growing up and that sort of thing, and how much we can challenge ourselves to remember.
Right.
So, well, I guess let's go into a little bit about who we are, and maybe that will help who's listening to this now relate a little bit to our era. I was born in 1976. Wyatt, you were born in 1975, correct?
Correct.
There's about a week and a half gap, 9 days, where Wyatt is actually 2 years older than me. He was born November 4th. I was born November 13th. So there's about 9 days there where he can claim he's 2 years older than me. But we grew up in Central PA, Pennsylvania, for those that might be listening in other countries, in the United States. And it was mainly what I would call rural, not a lot of, large cities in the immediate area where we grew up. I grew up in a small town called Kerwinsville. I think the population was around 3,000. Wyatt, he grew up Clearfield, and I don't know what the population of Clearfield is.
I don't know what it is now.
Maybe,
it's dwindling, but it was around the 8,000 mark at one point.
Okay, I was going to say 8 to 10 or in that range.
Yeah, and there was an era where we were growing actually big enough that they were considering turning it into a city. But that was a short-lived experiment, I guess is the best way to put it, because it never materialized.
Right. And, it's that's mainly what I would call small town USA. There's some other little towns in between, and then there is some little bit larger cities that we would visit on occasion. Altoona State College, relatively close, about 15 to 20 minutes away, is Du Bois, which is probably, I think it's technically a city.
It is considered a city, and I used to joke that it was the big city and the only city of the county.
So that's kind of our background where we grew up, mainly small town, but we would trek to go out to bigger towns and experience other things. I remember trips to Hill's department store in State College. I remember going to Showbiz Pizza in Altoona.
Yep.
Things like that. So special occasions, we would travel out of town, but there was enough around there to keep us busy when we were kids. But as far as how we met each other, our parents attended the same church when we were infants. And even just a couple years ago, when I was moving my mom out of her apartment, I found a box of old papers and memories and stuff. Found a baby book that was mine, and inside was this letter. And it's a letter from another family that we knew to Wyatt's parents. And it was, do you remember back in like the early 90s when we had like Columbia House and BMG, and they would sell you, 12 CDs for a penny? This back then, it was these little chain letters, and they were essentially getting these children's books from family to family by writing a letter and saying, would you like to buy 6 books for 49 cents or something? And if you signed up, you mail it back to the family, and then you wrote a letter to the next family you thought maybe would want to do this. And it's kind of like a chain letter. And I found this. I thought it was interesting that it was essentially not written to my parents. It must have been your parents that handed that letter to them, or it could have been this other family that originally wrote the letter that handed it off. Maybe if your parents didn't join up or something. But that little nugget I thought was cool that I found that. And we do know for a fact that they attended the same church together for a while. At least you remember having a conversation with my dad, right?
Yeah, we did. There was a conversation, and it was, I don't know why it sticks in my mind. However, we three, your dad, you and I, went to Kentucky Fried Chicken, the original Kentucky Fried Chicken in Podunk, Clearfield. It's now a
the video rental store.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name because I messed up.
Silver Screen Video.
Silver Screen, yes. I still have a membership for that. I still have my card somewhere in my memorabilia box. But anyway, yeah, we were having a conversation, and I don't know how it got brought up or how, whatever. Mm-hmm. And your dad had said that we were in the same class at Calvary Church. I don't remember which name it was under.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought that was really weird. And me and my memories, the only vague memory I have of being there is it must have been a birthday or Christmas present. And I came to Sunday school or children's church or whatever it was at the time, and brought this red travel case, but it was a Superman travel case, but it was kind of like those portable car garages like you have, Jason, the Hot Wheels portable garage. So it was kind of on that basis. I remember bringing it. So I think I remember asking if you remembered me bringing that or a kid bringing that. I don't recall if you said yes or no, but I remember having that conversation at that time. And that's just like, wow, we knew each other from at least 2, 3, I don't know how long we were there.
Yeah, I don't remember. I really don't remember that at all. I think we, as a family, stayed longer at that church than you guys did, because I do remember being baptized there in the river between the church and the Old Town Road Dairy, the mighty Susquehanna.
The West Branch of the Susquehanna. Come on.
Right. But that's crazy that, we essentially grew up together before we even have memory of it. We didn't really, I guess, remember being friends until we started going to school together. And that was around, what would that have been? 1984 or 5?
Whatever fourth grade was, yeah. I'd have to
about 9 or 10
peel
years
out
old.
I'd have to
about
peel
80, about 85, 86, somewhere in there.
I'd have to peel out my yearbook to get the firm date on that. But
so I went to school in Kerwinsville, preschool and kindergarten, and then this new school at the Alliance Church in Clearfield, which was called the Clearfield Alliance Christian School, appropriately. That was built when I was in first grade, and I started attending there. I would walk to the end of my street, catch a bus over to the Kerwinsville High School, and then wait and catch another bus, which was actually with the mainly seniors, probably juniors and seniors, to go to Clearfield, about an 8-mile trip down there. The technical school was just down the road from our school. So I could probably, do a whole podcast on everything I learned on those trips to Clearfield. One quick memory is there was a person that would bring their huge boombox ghetto blaster on the bus, and I can vividly remembering them playing "Bang Your Head" by, I think it's Quiet Riot, or is it Twisted Sister? I always get those two mixed up. I got a whole education on those 8-mile journeys back and forth.
I bet you did.
The school to there, but and then how did you end up at the school?
I'll try to be as succinct as I can, but I usually am not. I started out, as far as education, I started out at what was called the Victory Baptist Academy. And it started out in my neighborhood, actually. I lived in, they called it the east end of Clearfield. Mm-hmm. And about one street down, and I think a block over, maybe 2 blocks over, was I'll call it a plaza. Not much more than like two or maybe 3 storefronts. Mm-hmm. Down on Daisy Street. They had rented out, I don't know how big it was at the time, but they rented out, one of them and turned it into a pseudo church and private school. Started out there. I think I was only there a year. They moved it up to an older elementary school that was in the neighborhood, which ended up being about 3 blocks up the street from me.
Mm-hmm.
Then they finally built a new building across from the Alliance School.
I remember that.
Yeah. And at some point,
it's now a nursing home, isn't it?
Yes, it is, which is sad. Okay. And I sadly know a good portion of why, but that's another podcast and later. But early on, I kind of had the idea of money as far as expensive and, less expensive, whatever. And I've always been a cheapskate. Maybe this is where it stems from. But I don't remember the cost, but I remember sitting in, I guess, an orientation style, I don't know, briefing. I call it briefing thanks to my military background. But anyway, they were talking about prices, and I remember the prices. And then we went to the Victory Baptist Academy, got their prices, and my dad, I know, asked us what we thought. And it came out to being that I said, I think the other one is cheaper. So why don't we go there? And that's how I ended up at Clearfield Alliance. However, there was a big handicap, and I swear I'm still dealing with it today. At the Victory Baptist, they went under the PACE system, which was literally you go at your own pace. And you could go as fast or as slow as you basically wanted. And you learned your lessons. There was an hour for each study or whatever it was, and you literally just read the book and went through it, learned, answered the questions, and you took the test when that little booklet was completed. So there's really no studying involved. And
I like it already.
Well, I did at the time. But you would I still remember I was, I think, 2 to 3 grades higher in the math than I was everything else. I think everything else I was on par. I think there was either science or history. I don't remember which one. I was 1 grade above on their scale. But then I go to, Clearfield Alliance, and you actually have to study. And that was really a whole new concept. You actually had to take the material home and actually to study it for, a week, or at least cram for it.
Yeah, it was college prep too. It was geared for advanced learning.
Some of it was
Becca program, I think it was.
Yeah, some of it was. That's a second or third podcast by now.
True.
I know.
Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, I know my sister was kind of behind the times when she was trying to get some of the college credits. But
gotcha.
But yeah.
So 4th grade, around what we deemed was 84 or 85 or 86, is when we started to get to know each other, and then we've been pretty close throughout, from 4th grade up through graduation. We both kind of had our own little cliques, I would say. I was into sports, and I was on the sports teams, basketball, track, soccer, what we had at the small school. And I guess I mainly hung out with them, sat with them at lunch. And then you had another group that I guess I would call the nerds.
The jocks and the nerds, call it as it is.
Yeah. And you would sit with them, but we still, it was more or less after school was when we hung out.
Yeah, that was really the only exception. We really didn't hang out. I know I had tried out for basketball and the flag football, what little season that they had.
Did you run track one year?
Yeah, I was on the track for 2 years actually.
Okay,
third year,
third year,
they pulled me out. Actually, the school pulled me out because I was doing all my part-time work all the time, and they weren't pleased that I wasn't making enough practices or something. I remember that.
Yeah, but we hung out kind of after school. We went to, our birthday parties and stuff. And then later in our high school years, we hung out a lot more, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I just finished this little memoir, and self-published. And I was trying to remember some times maybe when you came to Kerwinsville, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember you visiting there. I still lived there until about 1990 when my parents split up. So about, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 years in there, I would have still been commuting to Clearfield to school. So what do you remember, I guess? Do you remember coming up to my house in Kerwinsville for parties or something?
I remember 2, possibly 3 times that I was up there. There might have been more, but I remember I'd say 2 or 3, because there was one instance where you were introducing me to all your GoBots. I remember you had Leader 1.
Yes.
And I think that is when I met Boulder Hill. Your Boulder Hill, I think, is about that time. Or at least one of those episodes.
Possibly. I was thinking maybe it was after we moved, but I don't know.
But I remember doing that. I remember us playing some game out back.
Okay.
We were going back and forth through the pine trees, and I don't know what the game exactly was.
Was it the winter time? Or was it summertime?
I want to say it was decent weather, at least, because I remember I took notice that you have your dad's woodshed and woodpile at the time.
Yeah, we literally had no trees or growth on the property, and Dad pretty much planted everything when the house, since they lived there, which I think they moved there in 74, and then the house was built in 1980, but it was all small kind of shrubs and growth and some fruit trees. So yeah, there was a lot in the backyard. That's accurate.
And then I remember being down in your basement, and I remember that was the first place I learned how to throw darts.
Right.
Because I remember your dad distinctly telling me not to throw it the way I was, which was I'm never threw them, and I'm getting ready to wind up for the pitch type baseball type throw, and he's like, no, you got to do it this way and a little bit gentler, because I was like hammering it into the backboard or something.
And those were real darts. Those weren't they weren't like kiddie darts. I mean, those were the real thing. No. And where he had it, there wasn't really like a backboard, I would call it. There wasn't anything built behind it except for like a cement wall. So if you missed the board completely, you would see sparks fly every once in a while.
I think I spent the night up there once.
Okay.
I vaguely remember that, but I don't remember, the hows and whats and all that.
Gotcha. I remember visiting your house. I remember your house on Dory Street pretty well. I also remember visiting your dad's place, which would have been later in the 80s, maybe even early 90s, up in, is that Glen Ritchie?
Glen Ritchie.
Yeah. Technically? Okay. But the house on Dory Street, I remember that pretty well. You had was it a 1-car or 2-car garage out back?
It was a 2-car.
2-car. And then you had a sliding glass door into your like kitchen and dining area. And for some reason, I remember on the kitchen counter, you had sea monkeys. And that was my first introduction to sea monkeys. Again, things you remember. Off to the left of that, past the dining area or kitchen, there was a place where you had your Texas Instruments computer set up. I don't know. Was that like a bedroom or?
No, that was basically an addition that they added on at some point, and it was that room was technically 2. There was the freezer was in there, and some extra cupboards, basically for an extra pantry, and then there was the laundry room was back behind that wall too.
Okay, well, I remember that, and then I remember going down the hall. You had another table, maybe like a more formal dining room. Off of that was a small little door that went down to your basement. I don't think I ever went down to your basement. Or what
No,
was
there
even
wasn't
down
much.
there?
Yeah, there wasn't much to the basement. It was the door was actually fit into the paneling that they had there.
Gotcha.
And the only thing that was down in the basement was the coal furnace. So
Okay.
it
Yeah. So we
actually wasn't
wouldn't be
even a
messing
full
around down there.
basement. Yeah.
And then,
Well, we might have. I think that's where we stored my big wheels in the one somewhere
okay.
down there.
Okay. And then off to the right was your living room. And I have a few memories there. I'm thinking it was a birthday party or something, but I remember being over, and it might have been around Halloween because we were watching that. It was like a Disney's Halloween Greatest Hits or something on TV, and they were playing. It was like popular music, but it had like Halloween cartoons in the background or something.
Yeah, I remember, and that's when you were bebopping to one particular song, and I was never introduced formally to rock. My dad was, mostly my dad was were very conservative, sheltered us for as long as he could. But you were sitting there bebopping.
There's no sheltering in my house, trust me.
Well, we were bebopping to, or you were bebopping rather to the Eurythmics' "Sweet Dreams," and I'm like, "What's this?" And that was the first time I'd ever heard that song. And then I heard Monster Mash and
right, yeah.
There was another ghoulish kind of kids.
I remember the Monster Mash being in there. I probably knew Sweet Dreams because when my mom bought her Chevy Monte Carlo, she actually bought it at a Ford dealer. And it came with one of those factory cassettes that had like a, I don't know, mix on there of popular music, and one of those songs was Sweet Dreams. So I played the crap out of that thing when we were in the car. I remember that. So that's probably how I knew that song. I also remember watching wrestling in there. I remember one time being over there. I don't know if it was the same time, but for some reason we were eating salad, and it was like my first introduction to ranch dressing. I'm like, oh, this is disgusting. What is this? And like everybody was eating it except for me, and I could just smell it. And I don't know. I don't know how I remember that, but anyway, maybe you can give some insight into that if ranch dressing was a thing at your house or something.
Ranch dressing was, I don't know where that came from, and I don't know the setting. I did have a birthday party. Birthday parties were few and far between for me. I never, I call it the introvert part of me, but I just never thought that much of birthday parties, just my own thing. Or then again, maybe it was just my parents never threw in many, so I just adapted. But either way, my first year there, I did invite people. First year there at Clifford Alliance, I remember inviting you, our mutual friend Leaf, which some people might wonder why we're calling him Leaf. That was kind of a
nickname.
It was a nickname, kind of a code name, because there was actually a chiropractic family, and each generation, instead of the first, second, third, or senior and junior and so forth, they actually went off of a tree moniker. So his dad was named Twig.
Yeah.
And I used to joke because I never knew the granddad's nickname, but I used to call him, what is he, Trunk or what? So anyway, I invited Leaf over. I want to say my cousin Bernie, at the time he wasn't my cousin. Trying to think. There was Donnie Kirkwood, if you remember him.
Yeah, I remember Donnie.
And I want to say there was someone else in the mix, and I don't remember.
I think the only time I went ice skating was over at his house. They had like a pond out back.
Yeah, I did.
Anyway, all right. So
I wish I was. We're not doing video now, but I actually still. I don't know if that was the Dukes of Hazzard birthday party, but I still have the napkins from that party.
Wow.
Yeah, they're still intact.
I got some stuff like that, but that's crazy. Yeah. Well, the Dukes of Hazzard fan that you are, I can see that happening. I remember back beyond that, there was like a sunroom where you kept all your like board games and toys and stuff. And then
board games, Tonkas, all my plethora of Tonkas.
We went upstairs, and your bedroom there was another room on the right, and that you had to go through. It was like a laundry room.
It was a little kind of mini hallway with the actual bathroom.
Okay.
Off to the side there. Then you got
to your room off of that, because I remember doing like Hot Wheels tracks from your room down through that room and down to the hallway, and probably going into your sister's room.
Yeah, she was right there at the hallway, so yeah.
Right. And another memory that just sticks out, playing in your room, I don't know what we were playing. Maybe it was computer games or something. We had American Top 40 on the radio. And this would have been, I think it's 89, because I remember writing all of the like top 5 or top 10 on your chalkboard.
Yep.
That was over by your bed. Number 1 was The Fine Young Cannibal, She Drives Me Crazy. So I think that was 89. I want to say 89 when that came out. So
it probably was around that time frame, only because that was shortly after the divorce. 86, I think, was about when the divorce hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little more liberated, we'll call it, when it came to rock music.
And then when did you move? When did you move to your house in, what was that, Frenchville? What do they call that?
Well, the mailing address said Frenchville. We called it Eden.
Right.
Frenchville was a very broad term town.
Right.
It really wasn't even a town, but we'll call it that. Yeah, we moved out. I would have been, I think I was about 14 at the time. So yeah, shortly after that, 1990, I think, is when we ended up moving out there.
So that sounds about right. And then about that time, my mom moved to a little house trailer in Hyde for, I don't even know if it was a year, maybe.
It was a short time, because I remember you being there, and then it was you moved next, I think, to that apartment across from the mall.
Yeah, I think I remember you being over there maybe once, and we were playing Spy versus Spy on NES.
Yep.
Which was one of our go-to games. And then she moved over to the mall, probably around 91-ish. And then my dad finally, about that time, sold our house, or had to sell our house, and moved to Clearfield himself. So I was in Clearfield after that point. I do remember being up to your dad's one time. It was right before one of my baseball games, when I was still living, or still playing in Little League. It probably would have been around 89 or 88. And I must have spent the night or something, because I remember being in my uniform, being across the street from your dad's house, and like throwing rocks at garbage.
Yep.
That was like down over a little hillside. There's just like a bunch of garbage piled up there, washing machines and old TV sets and stuff. Just, perfect target practice for throwing rocks. And in my baseball uniform, I'm winding up.
Yeah, would have been my step granddad's property, and his trash dump was right over the hill, and that was it. It was on private property, so it's not. I guess it was not a big deal at the time.
Right.
Yeah. There was a couple. I think you blew out at least one, maybe 2 TVs that were down there.
But then after that, in high school, you got a car first. I know you did, because you were my wheels for a couple years. Probably until after high school. Is when I didn't get a car until after I graduated, and we had some good times just cruising the town. And you had your bass thumper in the back, your bass cannon.
That was the third car. That's a whole other podcast in itself with cars.
Well, we could do a whole podcast on how many cars that you've had. But we hung out a lot then. I mean, we were kind of we had our own little hangout. There was a little hole in the wall burger joint, and I think they sold ice cream there too. They had a mini golf course outside, and inside there was a game room, and we spent many weekend hours at a time and quarters. Well, luckily, everything was just a quarter, even the pool table.
Yeah.
It was a little place that we called Beefs, and it was named after the owner, right? Or at least we named it after the owner.
Well, and everybody knew it was called Beefs because that was the guy's nickname, and you know the dude's stature fit the call sign. But the true name of that place was called Downriver Delight, and it's exactly what Jason said. There was, if you could picture it, it's an old ice cream kind of pull-up place, but they built two rooms on either side, which were not connected except through the kitchen. You had a little dining room on the one side, which might have 6 tables, I think. I don't remember. And then on the other side was
we had to like walk around to. That was weird.
Yeah, to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then on the other side was the arcade that we played in, which was basically an L-shaped room. You had the pool table right as you walked in with pole positions staring at you.
Yes.
And then you had, as you walked by, on the left-hand side, you had a jukebox. I think there was a pinball machine, maybe two.
I think there's 2 machines.
Yeah, then there was that helicopter game, I think, set on that side. And then
Tiger Heli or something like that. I can't remember. I never played it much.
Yeah,
the one that I played all the time there was Heavy Barrel. And let me tell you, I honed my skills on that game. I remember getting to the point where if I didn't beat the game on one quarter, it was a bad day. I was pretty good at that game. And then back in the corner, there was a bowling game that we loved too. It had the trackball to roll the bowling ball towards the pins, and then they had all these little characters. When you would get a gutter ball or a strike, turkey, for 3 strikes, and the one that always cracked us up was when you had like the 7-10 split and you went down the middle, and there'd be this little guy in a football uniform, and it would say field goal, and this bowling ball would like drop on his head.
Yep.
Many little quirky little cartoon, I don't know what you would call them, that would pop up during that game that we just loved.
Cartoons is what it was. Yeah.
And then
but I think I want to say that was called Capcom Bowling, but don't quote me on that.
We'll have to look it up. But and then the jukebox, I think you got 2 songs for a quarter, and it was a 45 record jukebox, so you could do like an A side, B side, or just the pick whatever. My go-tos were, I think, Phil Collins.
Yep.
And I know Aerosmith. There was, I think it was from the album Pump. So it was like Take Me to the Other Side, and I don't know what the other one was. You were all the country.
Pretty much, I was a country phase for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Garth Brooks is one. Friends in Low Places was on there.
Right. Yeah.
There was an Aaron Tippin, that song, I swear. In fact, a lot of people, I say a lot. I think you, my cousin, and one other said that the tune fitted me, at least during that era. Was There Ain't Nothing Wrong with the Radio.
I remember that song.
Because I started out with my dad's old car. That's what I acquired, is the best way to put it. And it wasn't in the best of shape when he, I'll call it when he ditched it to move up a little, or got a replacement car. So I would joke at school before I was 16. I would joke because one Christmas, I think it was just before I got the car. It was my birthday. But anyway, my dad bought me a new radio for it. So I would always say I'm out there listening to the radio in the car. Car don't work, but I'm listening to the radio. So I think that's where that came out of. But yeah, we just throw the quarters in for that. And this jukebox was nothing of glory by any means. It was, if any of you remember the old console record players that were like 10 feet long, 3 feet deep. I drink a little bit, but not by much. It was on that liking with just a little tilt of a menu, and that was your jukebox. It was not the frilly ones that you see in the 50s diner or anything like that. There was no glamour or glory to it. We just wanted the music, and that's what it provided.
Yeah. It was definitely worth the 12.5 cents per song.
Do you remember the poster just before you walked out the door?
No.
It just hit me. It was the Roadkill Cafe menu.
Oh my God! Yes. That was a pretty popular poster at the time because I remember seeing that in the stores, in the department stores and such. But yes, I do remember.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Wow. Okay. So that was our hangout throughout high school and a little bit after high school. We would cruise in many of Wyatt's vehicle. Mainly the one was the. Is it a Plymouth that had the sunroof?
Yes. However, you did what's the right word? You did I'm trying to think of the right term. Basically, you left your mark in the Pontiac, if you remember. I was working part-time at a gas station convenience store, and they had these awesome bargains on the real glass 16-ounce bottles of Pepsi or whatever, and they always had it was like $1.50 for the entire case of 24. So I would buy 2 cases. Maybe it was $1.50 a pack, but I think it was the case because they were trying to get rid of them. So I would buy like 2 cases of each. So I would have 2 cases of Dr. Pepper. That was my go-to drink. Yours was always Mountain Dew, and I always had them stuffed in that car.
Okay, I know where you're going.
Yeah, you know exactly where I'm going because you decided on the way up to go. We stopped at Sheetz or Unimart somewhere, and you grabbed Pixie Sticks. Unbeknownst to me, on the way back, you take a sip out of your Mountain Dew.
Oh no! Wait, because it was warm Mountain Dew. Okay.
Was it? Yeah, it was warm Mountain Dew.
I don't know if that had something to do with it because it was warm.
Oh, that had nothing to do with it. It's the chemical that.
So I'm just okay. So I'm eating Pixie Sticks. I'm like, okay, let's just combine the two, and then we'll save some time or whatever.
Well, what's funny? And I still remember this to this day. I wish freaking camera phones were invented at the time because he said, "I wonder what happens when you mix Pixie Sticks and Mountain Dew." And before I said, "Don't do it," because I knew what was going to happen. Boom! The volcano experiment just happened on my car.
It wasn't quite as bad as like Mentos and Diet Coke, but it overflowed definitely in a volcanic reaction, more or less like a science experiment volcano.
Yes.
So that went in your car, and then I promptly put my the bottle out the window while we're going down the road, and I'm sure I probably got it all over the side of your car.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that's fun.
So that was, and I also used. I remember we would go out spotting deer. That was a thing to do in Pennsylvania, when instead of just making left turns downtown, you could take your whole sunroof out
on my Pontiac.
And
my Plymouth.
On your Plymouth, and I would use that as a turret, basically. Like I'm Cliff Dagger from Mask, and I would hold the spotlight out there, and we'd go spotting for deer. That was half of my body out the window.
And for those that aren't exactly aware, we would go out about a month before hunting season. Hunting season was essentially the state holiday.
Yeah.
Even schools did not have school
on the first
day of buck season,
yeah,
which was the following Monday after Thanksgiving. Still is to this day.
Right.
So before that, the idea of spotting for youngsters like us was just more for our pure entertainment, but it was also good if you were a little bit older and wiser. You were actually spotting truly for good hunting sites where the bulk of the deer were.
And deer basically come out at night to feed, so that's why you go at night to look for deer.
Right, and there was even a curfew.
Yeah,
there was even a curfew. I think 10 o'clock at night was the curfew. And we got to see a buck fight. I remember once.
I do remember that. Yep. That was up in Greenwood.
Yep. There was things we'd see. You started a list on a 3x5 card, which I think I still have somewhere in my. My wife says I'm a borderline hoarder, and I'm starting to believe her now. But we would keep score of how many doe, how many buck, and then you went off on a tangent for whatever reason. Started marking down Mr. Prickers, which were porcupines.
Right.
And at one point, you marked down skunks as well. And then at one point, you marked down how many chocolate drink boxes you smashed.
It was just a matter of what we could find alongside the road to add to the list.
Do you remember, while we're on the topic, do you remember the one episode where we're out spotting? We had just started, and we were up on Rockton Mountain. We had turned towards Luthersburg, kind of the back way into Kerwinsville.
Uh-huh.
We were spotting deer, not doing anything. And the reason I say this is because you mentioned the key device that prompted this in that Plymouth, rather. And we're sitting there spotting. All of a sudden, we hear this big old boom. And both of us duck like we thought we were getting shot at.
Being shot at?
Yeah, and we're like, who's shooting shotguns? Because it sounded like a shotgun to us, or at least a loud rifle. And we're sitting there trying to figure it out, and it hit again. And it dawned on me what it was. So I turned up the music. It was Billy Joel. The
bass cannon in your car, yes.
Yeah, the bass cannon. The bass cannon was on a little bit higher level, so it caught all the bass. The main speakers never caught the song.
The song is River of Dreams. If you remember the beginning of that song, it kind of fades in. And it's like kind of a jungle vibe almost that goes on.
And then all of a sudden this big old boom from the bass.
Yeah, that bass cannon.
Yeah,
I do remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got some good spotting stories, good hunting stories. So we went hunting together a few times.
We also have some driving stories.
Driving
kind of marry actually all of that.
Yeah, that's probably good for another podcast. And then, there was about a year after we graduated that we were still kind of around town. Actually, we started working together at the radio station downtown. You started there first.
Right.
Was that right after high school or before?
Just before. Okay. I was working the gas station in 92, essentially to pay for the gas for the car and oil, whatever. But started there in 92. I was over at the Votech school taking electronics. And I remember this is in 93, or very early in 93. And the teacher was asking around if anybody needed a job. There was an opening at the radio station. I was piqued, but I'm like, I already have a job, so I want to give someone the fair shot. And I think about a week went by, and he came up to me personally and said, "Do you want the job at the WCB?" I said, "I'd love to have it, but I already have a job. It's not like I should get a second job." And he was like, "No one else has chimed in, and you got to learn. Sometimes you just got to raise your hand first." I'm like, "Okay, fair enough, cool." So I put in an application, got the job. I think it was in February
So
I think it was actually January.
Did you quit the gas station?
No, I still work that. I joked the last 4 months of my high school, I had 4 jobs, technically. Because I worked for 2 companies. I worked for what was at the time Beard Oil Company, and I worked at 3 of their gas stations. So I was a rover. I just go from one station to the next.
That's right.
So that's how I joked that I had 4 jobs. I technically didn't, because I would go from Clearfield to Cronesville and then to Exit 16, what was used to be known as Exit 16, that station up there.
Right. Okay.
And then WCPA was my Sunday night job. That's when I worked there. And then as they had a new management change at the gas station, and he and I didn't see eye to eye whatsoever. So I promptly left and asked to get more hours, and that was easy, I guess, at the radio station. Yeah. Started working there, and about a month after, maybe 2 months, it was July or August, I think was the time frame, that they were looking for someone else.
In the afternoon.
Yeah, so I said, hey, do you want to work in the radio biz? There's an opening down at WCPA. And you're like, that'd be awesome. I kind of like to be a DJ.
Yeah, I think I even said that. I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I kind of fluffed it for about a year. I remember writing in my little bio for our senior yearbook about wanting to become a DJ or something. And so I was like, yeah. And, I didn't know where I wanted to go to college, if I wanted to go to college, that kind of a thing. And this opportunity happened, and it was mainly what we were doing was behind the scenes. It was board operator.
Yeah.
Essentially. So that's what we kind of signed up for, where we are essentially running satellite feeds and playing commercials when prompted, when the script called for it. And then it was later, I don't know, maybe about a few weeks at least that I worked there, that the general manager said, hey, I like your voice. Why don't you start doing some on-air stuff in the afternoons? I think they played.
And the only time I was ever jealous of Jason was this time, because I had wanted to be a freaking broadcaster, and Jason gets the job.
And I was so stinking nervous. And I remember the first time, what was the girl that came in after me? Remember she was in the car wreck. I can't remember what her name was. She was the board op. She was the board op after me, and she came in a little early one night, and I was doing my last little news and weather update, and she was like, "Wait, you're allowed to go on the air?"
Yeah, I know. That was the standing rule in that station. Unless you were full time, you could not go on the air. And that actually got. This is the comedy. I don't know if you remember this. I think I told you this story, but we were in the middle of a sporting event, one of the local sports. I want to say it was football, but whatever.
Yeah.
And how this rolled, so the listener can kind of grasp it, is when the commercials would. When the announcer would say, okay, we'll be back, or usually the score was the cue mark. So, Clearfield Bisons are tied up, and, that was it. We would turn it to cue, which was basically it was an alternate speaker, was not broadcasting it. So while we're playing the spots, he would say, give me a 30-second, give me a 60-second, whatever the commercial speed was. Well, lo and behold, why I don't know, but the chief engineer decided to do maintenance on the cart machines. And so elaborate, cart machines are, think of, if you remember, Google it, they're like 8-track tapes, but they were a little bit more professional grade, but the same size. And they went into a cassette player, essentially. The only thing was that it had cue tones on it, so it would automatically know when to shut down. At 30 seconds, it would shut off.
Right.
So anyway, he decides to, clean the heads while we're doing this. And I know he's using alcohol, which means it will grip whatever it grabs. And it grips tapes really, really easily. Why he chose to do this, he says, oh, it should be good to go now. I threw it in there. It ate one of the cassettes. And And
this was during the broadcast.
During the broadcast, so I threw up the technical difficulties because it ate the only promo that we had. So I'm throwing the technical difficulties up.
I don't remember this at all.
You weren't there, but and it's hilarious because you hear this is all screwed up. We didn't have enough cell phones at the time. I think they were broadcasting off their cell phone at this moment. But anyway, the technical difficulties is spinning. The chief engineer, who is basically yelling at the brick wall, but he's saying, "I know, Bob, I'm trying to fix it." And this is all going on. We finally get it all straightened up, and it's going on like 4 minutes of technical difficulties, and we finally get it back up. Whole aftermath of this is he finally calls me up on his cell phone. This is a cell phone, the old car phone cell phone, the old monster. But anyway, he calls me and said, "What's going on?" Chief engineer grabbed the phone from me. He said, "Don't go hard on this guy. It was me. I decided to do maintenance right now. Why, I don't know. It ate the cart." And then he put the phone back and he said, "This is why we have this card up here. You can make the announcement." And I'm kind of a black and white kind of guy when it comes to laws and stuff and in that regard. So I'm like, didn't you tell me? And isn't the policy that's on the board over there saying that, unless you're a full-time broadcaster, you don't go on air for any reason?
Right.
Well, this is an emergency. Well, there's no tornado. It's not an emergency to me. So anyway, it went on to that kind of event, but it was kind of funny. But here's Jason. He wasn't
part-time. I was part-time. I worked the 2 to 7 shift listening to Glenn Burns, which was the kind of precursor for, well, I guess Rush Limbaugh had just started out too. I got some of him.
There.
He was there in the afternoons as well. So it was just all talk radio and stuff. But yeah, it was a big deal. And it got me hooked enough to finally kick myself in my own butt and go to college to be a broadcaster.
Do you remember the episode? Where we would go back and forth at this radio station? We loved it there. Honestly, we could almost call it a second home.
It was really fun. We play around with each other all the time, and the FM, FM guys,
yeah. In one such case, I still remember it to this day. I was really picking on Jason. He was relatively, I won't say new, but still trying to get the grips, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. But we were just bantering back and forth. And he says, "Hey, go grab me Johnny Holiday," which was a little segment. This cart, again, it was recorded in the next room. Not a big deal. But our console was a U-shaped, and of course it was pointed the wrong way going to that room. And he says, "I got like 3 minutes or whatever left." I'm like, "Okay, I'll get it." And we started chit-chatting a little bit, and it got to like 2 minutes and 1 minute, and I'm sitting there bantering with him. He's like, dude, there's like a 10-second wait on it. Come on, go get it. So I finally walk over. I really wasn't watching the clock. So this is all happenstance. Not at all. It actually worked. So I actually chucked the cart up over the console, and this console was taller than this desk, rather, is taller than Jason and me. So I toss it over. He catches it, throws it in the cart machine, hits play, and we could have never done this in a million years, and we did it this time. It was right on cue. He played the Johnny Holiday intro, and then here's Johnny Holiday right on cue. And he's like, "Dude, don't ever do that again." So we did that. You used to really piss off CJ.
Yeah. Yes, I did. Well, he pissed me off too by playing I Would Walk 500 Miles. Oh gosh, I hated that song. And I remember that episode too. I was there for that. He would be in the FM room, and in the AM side, which is what we were, we had a speaker that you could listen to the FM, so I could get all my, wonderful adult contemporary music. And he would dedicate that dang song to me in the next room, and he would say it was my favorite or something. And it was about the time too.
There was one episode.
I was going to say it's about the time too when swear. Remember that song, that I swear?
Oh yes. Yeah, yep.
He did that song too, and he would play that one and dedicate it to me. I'm like, are you kidding?
that one episode though, you say about 500 miles. I was there for it. He had you stay at home to run demo tapes for him, to record demo tapes on his stereo, and he looked over at me. He says, "Dude, you feel like pissing off Jason right about now?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So he opens the mic and says, "This is to a very special dear friend of ours. You know, he really loves this next song. So I really wholeheartedly." He went on this like,
I was so mad
banter about it. And he goes, he never said what it was until he says 500 miles. The moment he said that, the phone rang, and and he yelled. Jason yelled over the phone, "I hate that song." It was hilarious. But you know what? He got us back in a way. Well, you more so, because you would call him on the same line and hang up the phone because it would still ring twice.
Yeah.
And we all had to do the spiel, the line, to, when you pick up the phone. "Hi, this is WCPA, WQAX. This is CJ. How may I help you?" Or, something like that. And he'd go through that whole line and be dead.
Click.
And after a while, he started saying, "Not that beep." Oh, and we could hear him through 2 sound booths. So it was hilarious that he could do that.
We had some good times at that station. We better keep going, or we won't get away from that station. Working overnights, playing Minesweeper on the computers out front. I mean, we did a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah, and that's I never realized, but that's where I got my, I guess, kind of grasp on the technical side of it, because I had learned. I jokingly called it that I knew how to rewire the radio station. They had patch panels in every room, and I had figured out how to. When the FM station went on automation, the computer took over for all the commercials and IDs and everything. It was really a playhouse. We could make our own custom, mixtapes, and I used to add the liners to them. And I was on a date once, and I actually was listening to the cassette, and she swore it was the radio station until my ever popular, most people remember, it didn't have the auto reverse, it had the auto stop. So I had to, eject the cassette to flip it to. She goes, "We're listening to your cassette." I'm like, "Yeah, you have the QIX." I'm like, "I work at a radio station. I make it sound good. Make it sound like it's actually there."
Right.
So she loved it.
Hey,
but
babe, we work at the radio station.
Yeah, free music back before Napster happened.
Right.
But
anyway, we kind of were there for about a year, right? And let's see. When did you go off to the Air Force? What year?
I joined in 95. It was February 95, and I worked, I think, up until the last few days at the radio station. There was 3 individuals I still remember to this day that Bob kept saying, "I really need you to train these guys. Can you stay another day, another day, another day?" So, transitioned to military life, joined boot camp, left on the 7th of February, got there on the 8th, and got yelled and screamed at for 6 weeks.
I still have I was digging through some memories. I still have some letters back and forth between us while you're at boot camp and all that kind of thing. I can't remember when I quit the radio station, but I quit to go to college in Georgia, and at a small little private Christian college. And I started there in the spring of '96, and I still remember writing each other back and forth, sending pictures of the dorm and that kind of thing. But we still kept in touch. I remember going one spring break while you were stationed at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois.
Yep.
I drove from Georgia to Illinois, and we spent a day at St. Louis, which was still a pretty fun day. I remember we went up inside the St. Louis Arch and went to the World's Fair Museum there, I believe it was.
Oh yeah, and then you got to eat lunch on the floating McDonald's.
Yep, I remember doing that. I remember watching Blazing Saddles at your house for some reason.
Yes.
So we kind of saw each other, during summer breaks and I think stuff like that. When you were on leave or home, I was trying to, I think we might have, saw each other a couple times. But then it was right around, I think, 2007, around in there. So skip ahead, after
a few years. Yeah.
We both got married and we had moved from Georgia. After I got married, we moved from Georgia to Montgomery. You were at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. And we were having a phone conversation one day, and we decided to.
I was actually not there. I had finally gotten east.
I was. Oh, were you okay? So you were in New Jersey.
Fort Dix, New Jersey. Yeah.
I was still thinking you were out there. So, anyway, we had gotten to the point where we were calling each other on the phone and stuff, and internet, email. We were big into the Yahoo Messenger. And back in the day, you could play games like Pool and Battleship and stuff like that while you're chatting.
Yeah.
So we would do that.
We did that a lot.
I remember doing that while you were, I think, over in Korea for a while as well in the early part of your
career. We did that. And we did, I used to call people on what was before Skype. They had this thing called WavePad, I think was what it was called. And it was the most echoey thing. Everybody always said you sound like you're in like 3 tunnels or something, but it was free, so you did what you use what you can.
Right.
But yeah, we got in contact. Really, we were always in contact, but not like we are now. We're almost I would say daily, if not hourly, at times.
Chatting
in contact now. Yeah, but
we got
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we were just having an innocent kind of phone conversation. And it was right after the time, I think the first Transformers movie came out.
Yep.
I want to say that maybe the first G.I. Joe was in the works. And it was just kind of Hollywood has always, had reboots and remakes and stuff like that. But I think it was kind of that beginning of this kind of 80s,
like the 80s comeback. Yes.
Yeah. Pop culture where that really, people were really, for lack of a better word, rediscovering their, childhoods and stuff. And a lot of that culture was coming back into the mainstream. And, we were just trying to think of a way to essentially keep in contact with each other more.
Right. And then it turned into, we kind of joked initially that it was going to be, we need to, cash in on this 80s craze, we love it. So why not?
Yeah.
And then we started actually thinking about it as, okay, what movie is not in the works that's not being made? So we started just rambling off names. I remember touching on Voltron or A-Team, and
it wasn't like we were big into writing or anything at the time.
Not at all.
We were just essentially trying to brainstorm and come up with something that maybe we could work on.
And then we finally came to that. I think actually you suggested. Said, do you remember that Mask show cartoon that wasn't on Saturday mornings on open air? It was actually on a cable channel, and we're like, yeah. I love that show. It was actually kind of fun. And you're like, yeah, that'd be kind. I think it's small enough that no one's writing a movie about it, but there was still a fan base. So we started doing some kind of brainstorming, and then we stopped because kind of reality hit us that how many years has it been since we really watched this show?
Right.
So we went half and half on a $14 bootleg European smuggled eBay purchase. I think it was eBay.
Yeah, it was eBay. It was a DVD set that was half of the series, like the first 30.
I don't think it was 30. I think it was like 28 or something.
No, it's like, I want to say it's like 32 or 36 episodes.
Oh.
Which there was 75 total in the series. But anyway, so we bought that, and I don't know who got it first. I might have gotten it first, and I watched it for a while, wrote down some ideas, and I mailed it to you, and you watched it, wrote down some ideas, and then it started this whole big brainstorm Word document that
before Google Docs we literally emailed each version of a brainstorm. So if we made if we made any type of edits, we actually renamed the document to 2 or 3 or 4. We were up to, I still have them in my hard drive. We were up to brainstorm number 17 on February 10th of 2008 before we finally decided, you know what? Let's start writing the script.
So, I think it was 2010 when you came down here to Alabama to do some schooling through the Air Force, and we're here for 6 weeks. That we had a good portion of the screenplay wrote, and then we finished it up at the I think it was like around September, October of 2010, and that's when we essentially started putting ourselves online, where we started it was like a masked movie blog, I believe in January of 2011.
And then shortly after, trying to decided to do it.
Right. And we started promoting the script, and then I got into podcasting. I was a guest on a couple of shows, and we started our own Mask podcast, which reviewing episodes mainly. And then that all got kind of switched over to Agents of Mask and becoming more part of a community, about 2 years ago now.
And that actually has helped us even more, because initially it was, at least on my side, we were looking at it from a monetary type of thing. We were like, hey, let's sell this for $250,000 and advertise and go. And then it turned into, that's it. But then we started thinking, you know what? We know there's more fans. We had started seeing when we were working on the website, the blog, the original blog, we'd seen Albert Pineo, Bill Ferris, and Eric Tukey, their respective pages, and we just kind of used their sites really as encyclopedias, really. Yeah. And then we started seeing so much of fan base building up that we're like, you know what, this is actually fun. We actually get people that want to connect and talk about it. And so you actually had the brainy idea of, kind of working off the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s phenomenon that was just coming out. So we were like, hey, let's call it is Agents, because they called themselves Agents anyway on the show. Right, let's do Agents of Mask. And that's really propelled us. I'm not trying to toot our own horn, but that really propelled us into being really recognized back in 20.
It was last year, 2015.
Well, I'm going back for one more. 2014. Okay. You had the awesome luck of being able to grab an interview over Skype for the podcast with Doug Stone, which was the original voice actor for Matt Tracker, Bruce Sato, and a host of others.
Yeah.
So, we never fathomed we'd be talking to them, although, we saw them wish us the best of luck on our Facebook page, but that's all we ever got from them.
Yeah. And I had heard,
good luck getting,
I had heard Doug on another podcast, and that's when I went for it, because I knew he was doing shows, and I thought, well, let's try to get him on our show. And then fast forward another year. Yeah, it did. Fast forward another year, and we got to be on a 30th anniversary panel at RetroCon with Doug. and with Bill Ferris to just basically chat about Mask, which was a awesome honor and very surreal.
Yeah.
I mean, even past the being able to interview him, it was on a whole nother level. Still up there.
Yeah.
It was really fun getting to hang out with him. And
we kind of acted. We acted kind of like his managers, and not and more like impromptu managers, because we had all talked with him. Bill far more than us. Bill seemed to have more of a connection with him, mostly about hockey. But Jason, being in the print and advertising business that he is, he put together autographing type photos, 8x11s, that had all the cast members that he had voiced, the primary ones that he voiced, for him to sign. And he was pleased beyond anything, because he didn't bring anything. He didn't know what to expect. He'd never been there. He'd even indicated on our podcast that he'd gotten kind of put off by his friends that dealt with the paparazzi. He's like, I don't want to have anything of this. But he figured he'd, step his toe in the water and see what happens. If he didn't like it, he'd never show up again. But I think he had a great time. But he was so pleasant, so impressed that we brought that to him. We chit-chatted for I don't know how long with him. We got the first photos with him, and
it was a really cool experience. And it's just kind of continued us along as Mask is coming back now in comic book form. We're keeping that going. Well, as all of this Mask stuff is going on, I started Rediscover the 80s in 2011, towards the end of that year, I think on October 1st. And I just started blogging about rediscovering stuff from my childhood. And the website, has morphed into this and that and what it is today. And of course, Wyatt, you've been a contributor to that site for basically since I was the beginning, writing articles from time to time.
Honestly, right. What he means really as a contributor, at least in my definition, is I throw lots of ideas at him, whether what sticks or what doesn't, that's up to him. But I'll get whims on him, hey, maybe we should write an article about this or whatever. Or maybe you could do a podcast about that. And that's kind of what it's stuck to. But there are times where there's key topics or things in the 80s that I would call that I absolutely love more than the general 80s that it is. And what I mean is I have a big fascination with Voltron or A-Team, those type of shows. And
Knight Rider.
I kind of pat myself on the back on one particular, I'll call it a series of articles, and that's the A-Team at 30 that we did, where we kind of went, I jokingly think it was overboard, but I think it was even enough, because we decided to go, what was the top 10 insane moments of Murdoch, and then what was the top 10 scams of Face. Then we had the top 10 costumes of Hannibal, and then what started out as being just sayings, and that's what my intention was, is just top 10 of BA sayings. You actually changed it, and which was actually a lot better, was, kind of the Urban Dictionary that is BA. He came up with the actual definition of, you pity the fool and all that. So
it was like the translate. Yeah. What's the translation?
Right.
What's the proper translation to pity the fool?
Right. So it was
I
actually
feel sorry for this stupid person. But I love those little collaborations. We should really do more of those. Bring some of those back, because that whole month, which I somehow stumbled onto calling it Murdochtober, it was just a blast, and we released so many articles that we collaborated on, and some we did ourselves. I remember that was probably about the time that we were going through the A-Team here in my house with my two boys. So that was all kind of fresh on our minds. And, that has, doing little articles in there, we we've collaborated on many podcasts on that side of it.
We even had the unique privilege when the most recent Ghostbusters movie came out. I'm usually very, very busy, tied up with family and work and so forth, but we were able to, although in separate states, we were able to go out on premiere night and literally, write down notes for the whole movie.
Yeah, and we weren't texting back and forth during the movie, but we did leading up to going into it.
Oh yeah, we were talking about what the, I'll call it the storefront, but the main area of the lobby, what it looked like. Mine was like, who cares about the movie? Yours was all ate up about it. In fact, I got a guy, as we were leaving, he saw my notebook and he says, "Are you a critic or something?" So it was actually kind of fun, this whole thing. And that night we were both on the blog putting our impressions on it. So I really applaud Jason for his Rediscover the 80s, and I love it because I love the 80s. I just don't, real life puts the brakes on.
Well, and that's what kind of drives, I think, both of us in our free time now, because we're both, family men. You have 2 kids, I have 3 kids, and our spare time is somewhat precious to us in that we like living in the past, and when we do get together on rare occasion, typically about once a year, we'll be driving up to see my family in Pennsylvania and stop by, or last year was RetroCon. I flew up for that.
We saw each other, I think, 3 times that year.
It was
because you had to for vacation, then we came up for RetroCon, and then you had to move your mom again, all the same year.
So
those are fun, because when we do it, we make sure we podcast on those days.
Yeah.
RetroCon, I think we're going to stop.
Right. It all kind of started, I think, when you did come down for that training in 2010. We finished the mask script, and then remember it was around Thanksgiving. We went up to my in-laws in Georgia. You came along, which I'm not sure you were supposed to, but you did anyway. And that Saturday,
that wasn't Thanksgiving. That was August, but nonetheless, yeah.
No, I was thinking it was a time you were down around Thanksgiving, and we went on a Saturday morning. We got up early and we drove to what's the town in Georgia?
Covington.
We drove to Covington, Georgia, which was maybe about an hour, to basically sightsee. Covington, Georgia is where.
Yeah, that was another year, but yes, around Thanksgiving.
Okay. I think it was on that Saturday right after Thanksgiving. We drove over by ourselves, and we basically went to filming locations where they filmed Dukes of Hazzard.
It was the first 5 episodes of the Dukes of Hazzard where we, at least the Dukes community, consider that was the true Dukes of Hazzard. But yeah, you'd see the plaza really hasn't changed except a little bit of modernization. What was the county courthouse for Boss Hog is still the same. We went over to the college where they did the one jump scene. You usually see it on the intro music, but it's the very last scene. As he's saying, as the song is concluding, you see him jumping over. We got to see that. In fact, we saw Scrape Marks, which we assumed was a remake of a jump scene at some point.
Right. We saw that where the bar, the
Boar's Nest.
The Boar's Nest,
which is now a church.
That was or some building owned by a church. Yeah. And just some of the like we thought maybe some of the jumps were over some old railroad tracks, and that was fun. That was just us totally immersed in our past. Yeah. And we did that a little bit last year at RetroCon. We did that one more time when you came down. I think it was 2 years ago. was it in the spring? You came down. I picked you up at the Atlanta airport, and we drove down to Newnan.
Yeah, and that's when we went. Yep.
We went to this guy,
AKA Junk. Yep.
Right. He basically cars. He creates a lot of the movie cars and such like that. And I just by chance I saw a story on one of the Atlanta TV stations, and so I was in Newnan, and I thought, well, he comes down and we'll go visit. And we got to meet the '89 Batmobile. We got to meet. They were just doing a General Lee at that time. He had Kit. He had
Herbie.
He had Herbie. He had Eleanor from Gone in 60 Seconds. The old
he had a
fastback. He had a Mater.
Yeah, he had a Mater. Yep.
It was just cool. He had Luke's land speeder.
Yeah,
that was actually a float for a parade. He had a Mystery Machine. He had a van, which I still don't know if he has turned that into the 18 van or not.
I don't know if he has yet or not, but that was the endeavor at the time.
Yeah,
he had the 79.
Go ahead.
Bumblebee.
Yeah, he had the
Camaro,
older Bumblebee Camaro from the first Transformers movie.
Right, but complete with the new seats.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, that was really cool. We got to see some of our favorite cars kind of up and close, and that was a fun little trip. And we're actually planning one next month in the early November, which is around our birthdays. We're going to go to another car museum up in Tennessee and check out some rides that I have not met yet, but they're all under basically one roof. You know, the DeLorean Time Machine, Ecto-1. I think he's got a Kit. He's got the A-Team van. He's got them all. He's got an Ecto-1. So we're going to go up there and check this out. We're going to hit some other little, we're going to have a throwback weekend. Essentially. I found a little video arcade that we can go in and pay a cover price and play all we want. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to document it. We'll put it up on the site too. But that's, right. I guess, fast forward, however many 35 years from when we first started hanging out. That's our thing now. We're either online, we're coming up with ideas, fun stuff. Oh, yeah. Where when we do get together, let's find something fun to do that's associated with our childhood, with the past.
Yeah. And I remember RetroCon. I'm back at it, but it just hit me. I remember us, because we're talking about our nostalgia and whatever. It was kind of funny, you know, for two close to 40 at the time year old men, and to close out RetroCon because it was such a high for us. I dragged out my old NES.
Yes.
I remember picking up an Three Stooges cart. We played that. We played Arch Rivals. I think we played Spy versus Spy. I'm not 100% on that. We played something else just for nostalgia purpose. It was
great. We stayed up. We played that. We watched that Back in Time, Back to the Future documentary on the Time Machine. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was on Netflix. Yep. I think it's still on Netflix. But yeah, I mean that's kind of what we do. I still live and breathe it. When I'm playing video games, you know, when I'm not playing Halo with my with my boys, I try to get them to go back and play Contra. You know, we play. We'll fire up the Nintendo or the Genesis. I still have a Genesis, and I've got several discs on the Xbox that are like Sega Genesis games. So
what's funny about him doing? He's saying about the Genesis. We mail stuff back and forth all the time. He at one point was, I think, cleaning out something.
Might have been during the move. Yeah. I mailed you my Genesis with all my tapes, my cartridges.
Yeah, you mailed them all out, and we my wife and I played with it more. I did more, and then I boxed it up for some reason. I think we were getting ready to move to this house, and you had said, "Hey, do you still got my Genesis?" I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna get rid of it. And you're like, not a problem. It is yours. And then years and years ago, Hotels game, and he still has that.
I still have that. Yes, I still have the Mask DVD set. I found that the other day. But yes, one of our
still also have my Super Mario 3.
I do. I still have that card. I don't forget.
Yeah, but we used to do this. We used to do this. In fact, we used to for a while, back before, back when dial-up was the only thing, we would actually exchange thumb drives of certain files, usually songs, but of stuff like that.
So fast forward now, we kind of immerse ourselves in that, and I think that's a little bit as we come kind of end this podcast and we go back to essentially why we're starting it, and it's just to keep ourselves immersed in what we remember, what we enjoyed from our youth, experiences, memories, jogging our memories. I mean, that's why we're calling the podcast Memory Jogger. It's just we'll come up with a topic and we'll just see where it goes. And speaking of topics, like I said, we wrote several down. What do you think we should do for episode 2? What should we start out talking about?
Being that it's so close, I think we should talk about Halloween specials that happen, like the Charlie Brown Halloween, and maybe a couple other ones that came to mind. Maybe we can do some YouTube Googling and find that Disney special and try to remember it.
Yeah. At one point it was on there, I think. Stuff gets put on there and taken off so much, I'm not sure if it was on there. I had one point created a Halloween playlist of specials on YouTube for the RD80s channel. But maybe we can dig that up. Maybe we can talk a little bit about our memories of Halloween. If we can remember some of the costumes that we did, maybe some experiences. I know I wrote a little bit in my memoir about it. Some stories about basically my transition from the treats to tricks. When when you stop doing the trick-or-treating and then now you go out and you be a little mischievous, so I think we should see if we can remember some stuff about that, and we can go from there and see what we can remember about Halloween. I think that'd be a good start. Good first real show, I'll call it, right, for this new podcast. So, well, man, it was good reminiscing with you. I feel like we do it a lot, but we don't do it a lot in this official capacity,
No, and you're right. We do reminisce off and on. Hey, do you remember this or that? But this is fun because this was a lot of memories, some that we've probably both forgotten at one point or another.
Right.
These are great shows, and I'm actually have high hopes for this one because this is for the listener. It's for every listener, honestly, but I guess we would call it a target range of about the mid-30s to mid-40s era when we can remember that when cable TV kind of first dawned, as well as MTV, and seeing certain things that were now reruns. We kind of lost sight of it. You might catch it on a very late CBS or NBC or something like that. But now it's come to, almost mainstay to have, back at the time, like a Nick at Night, black and white shows from the 50s or 60s. So this is awesome. I'm glad we came up with this idea, and
and I feel like
awesome.
In that what you were talking about with the age range and those of you who were born maybe early mid 70s to the early to I would say early 80s. We still got some of the stuff in the late 80s. And I mentioned a little bit about this too in my book, and I've actually written a little bit over on Underscoop Fire about it. But I don't know. I feel like we had a unique experience as kids. We were, at least where I grew up in the rural areas, you still wanted to be outside, but there was still such a push to play video games and stuff inside. Maybe not when Atari came around, because those games were more basic. But when the NES came around in like '85, you were sucked inside more. And I just felt like there's a shift nowadays where kids are tuned into screens 24/7. It seems like at least my kids are, and they don't have that. And the parenting styles, and the laws have changed so much that there's such a tighter leash on kids these days than we had back then. So we still could ride our bikes a mile from home to go to the candy store, or just go up in the woods and have a day of it and come back around dinner time. You really can't do that nowadays, just for safety, and the times have changed. So I don't know. I feel like our age, back in the 70s, 80s, we had a very unique experience, and had almost the best of both worlds. And then of course the explosion of the FCC rules being basically downgraded, so where they were showing 30-minute toy commercials to us, and this huge explosion of animation, action figures, toys, for boys and girls, for everybody.
Right.
Everything just kind of seemed to be unleashed in the 80s as far as marketing and advertising goes. So there's, I don't know. I just feel like it was, I feel fortunate to have grown up during that time. And it's hard to explain really to my kids. I've tried to impose some of the shows and try to give them essentially a glimpse of what it was like when I was a kid. And it's hard for me nowadays watching them and comparing what their experience is to mine. I'm like, man, we just had it so much better back then. They just don't realize, maybe we had to hit a rewind button instead of having a skip button. They don't know what rewinding is, but
no.
it was still a different time, and the technology was just in its infancy, and home computing, home video games, but we still had the arcades, and we still had other things that we could go to, but anyway, I'm rambling, but
no, but that's good. The emphasis is on the genre that we're trying to reach. Yeah, and it's still open to everybody. I know that there's some niches. Yeah, there's some niches. I've come across people in my workspace that they're in their young 30s, if not even 30, and they're saying, "Oh, I love the 80s. I missed the NES." I'm like, "Do you even know what an NES is?" Like, well, yeah, it was. One of them said it was a hand-me-down, and she said that was the best hand-me-down she ever got. I'm like, yeah, that's the spirit right there. But
we still got some 90s too, because we were in high school in the early 90s, which I like to bring some of the stuff out of the early 90s and group it with the 80s. Right. Maybe and mid to late 90s when everything kind of, I don't know, seemed to be more generic to me. But I think there's a little bit younger people that will listen to.
Right. And our goal is, as much as we are to rediscover the 80s, it's you have to drop that moniker on this. It's more like rediscovering your time, your what you grew up with. That's why we've titled it Memory Jogger. It's really over everything. So we might reach back. Jason and I are big Three Stooges fans. So I know there's going to at least be one, maybe two episodes where we just go back to the Stooge age, maybe Abbott Costello, that era of TV, because we grew up with it. Granted, it was on reruns, but still, that was something we liked.
Yeah, it was.
But there's going to be people that could care less about the Three Stooges and are more of the westerns or whatever, phrase. Not that we're any.
Well, if you think
I should
about
get my dad on for westerns.
Well, we could get them both on the show and then just have them take over the western show if we do one.
It would be until they said, "How do you stop this dang thing?"
But yeah, like you said before, Nick at Night. I remember watching Nick at Night and all the 50s and 60s era shows. I remember watching the 66 Batman after school. Even Scooby-Doo was 70s more than 80s. And
same with Flintstones, yeah.
Yeah, Flintstone. I mean, there were several shows like that that we still watched during that time. That were, on broadcast TV, on cable TV and such. So yeah, it's all a part of that experience. So keeping it out of, let's talk about this specific show and its 8 seasons and every episode. We're not going to do that. We're just going to be more or less grazing over how that show came in contact with us or whatever. We like doing Halloween or Christmas or, we probably do a couple episodes on Christmas on all of our memories and stuff like that. Holidays.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, well, I think this is a good time to end it. I like your idea. Let's go ahead and move forward with a Halloween show the next time we get together. We don't have a schedule yet as far as how often we're going to release this. I would like to do at least once a month, maybe a couple, but having this kind of unstructured format, I think it enables us to just let's get on the air and let's talk, and we'll see what comes out, that kind of thing. Hopefully, it'll be entertaining enough that people will listen. But having that unstructured type format, I think, is going to help us get on the air more. And as we get ideas for shows, we can just hop on and talk about it. Or as, headlines hit the news about maybe somebody passing away or a show being rebooted or something, we can get back on the air and talk about different things. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it, man. It was good. Again, good reminiscing with you. And I look forward to this show and all of our memories kind of combined. And I know there's going to be times when you remember things that I don't, or we essentially kind of put the puzzle together, so to speak, of I remember, you remember, oh yeah. And, we went off and do a couple things on this show, but we talked about specific memories and experiences. So it's going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yes, and like Jason said, this has been awesome going down memory lane, jogging our memory rather. So we invite you again to join us. Jason's going to put out a blog article, and we're going to ask for your interaction because it'll be fun to hear someone say, "Oh man, I remember this or that." So it'd be kind of fun to read those.
Yeah.
But until then, thanks for listening. This has been awesome. I hope you get your memory jogged like us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.